Mm. 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 They're up there on top. Mm. They're up there.
I think if we went higher up, we'd be in the worst position for the sun.
I hope that the people up there are going to come down if they do want to listen. Otherwise, I can go get the microphone, but I will have to stand all the way up there, and then it looks like I'm being antisocial. So I might as well do it to a little group of you down here. Welcome to Peak Wildlife Park. My name is Helen, and it is my pleasure to speak to you about our beautiful polar bear boys. So as you can see, we have two polar bears. These two are twin males, so they are both exactly the same age. They're actually just about to turn 4 at the end of November, so it's the 29th, so we've got about 2.5 weeks, which means that they are still juveniles and they are still growing. The bigger of the two, see where we've got them. So we've got Noori. I think Noori's at the back there, the sun behind him's not helping. But Noori at the back there, the slightly smaller of the two, he's about 470 kilos.
Mm.
Much larger brother in about 540 kilos, so quite a big gap between the two, but one prioritises food above pretty much everything else, so I'll let you guess which one that is. Yeah, Nanook is the slightly larger of the two, Noori is the smaller of the two. If you ever see them up close, you can see that size difference is quite big. These guys have been with us for about 2.5 years now. They arrived from a zoo out in Sweden called also Predator Park, which is where these two were actually born. So they were about half the size when they arrived with us, about 250 kilos. The polar bears do grow at a phenomenal rate because they would have started life at about the size of a guinea pig. So they, at half a ton at 4 years old, pretty impressive growth rate. So these guys would be out in the wild at the moment. They would be, would you believe, on land still. So although we often assume that polar bears have access to snow and ice all year round, if you have a look at what the summer months look like, in particular out in the Arctic, it would probably be a very different story to what we imagine. And I think that's because we always see polar bears on Frozen Planet. They are always on Frozen Planet, and they are only showing one time of year. It's generally going to be the time of year when it's easiest to see them. It's probably either going to be spring or autumn, because if you can imagine what winter looks like in the Arctic, trying to film the white bear in a snowstorm, it's not going to be very easy. So you generally see them either in the spring when they're just about to come onto land, or the autumn just as they're going back out onto the ice. But out in the Arctic, these guys have an incredibly varied life depending on what time of year we're talking about. And our boys do seem to follow definitely the trends, the activity levels, the appetite of those out in the wild. So during the winter time, it's actually, you know, minus 40 degrees. It could be incredibly harsh, very hard to catch any food. And what polar bears eat in the wild are generally seals. Ringed seals and bearded seals make up the vast majority of the diet, but they will also go to things like belugas, walruses, narwhals, kind of anything that pops out of the water they'll give a go at. And all of those things are very fatty. Being marine mammals, they've got a big layer of blubber on the outside, and that's ultimately what the polar bear is looking for. The blubber layer on the outside, fully fat, and that's what these guys are made for digesting. Their digestive system is completely created on digesting fat, and it helps these guys in multiple ways. Not only is it allowing them to put on their own blubber layer, nice thick fat layer that's going to keep them warm in the colder weather, it's also going to help them because they can store that, whereas other different food items will be very hard to store in your body. Proteins and carbohydrates, our body digests them very quickly, uses the energy. Fats get stored on the body, and that means that these guys can go really long periods without eating, which is very, very convenient because they have to ultimately. If they catch something every 7 to 10 days, they're on a roll during the winter time. It's very, very infrequent that they are successful. They will try many, many times and fail, particularly over those winter months, because the snow and the ice can be so incredibly thick. You've got seconds of time before that seal disappears. And what they will do is called still hunting. They're basically sitting by the edge of the ice, waiting for something to pop up to be able to grab it. Lots of luck involved, hence why they are incredibly unlucky and not very successful. During the spring, they do succeed more often, and it actually completely changes their body, their digestive system, because at that point they allow themselves to get hungrier because they are more successful. And we see it here that as soon as they think spring has kicked in, and it's very important that it's their spring and not the calendar spring, because I did try last year to start feeding them up in about April, and they were like, no, it's not spring yet. I was like, it is, I'm sorry. Leek's just wet. They're like, no, it's not. So yeah, I have to wait for their digestive system to go, oh, it's spring, we're hungry, let's eat lots. And during that time of year, out in the wild, they would be eating more seals. Sounds really morbid, but actually baby seals are far easier to catch. That's the time of year they're being born, and they're actually far more tired, they are inexperienced and less likely to escape. So these guys are far more successful in spring. The ice is melting slightly, so there's flows between the ice, which really, really helps. And these guys can get around that a little bit easier, less, you know, less minus 40 and maybe minus 20. Still very, very cold, but nowhere near as harsh. So polar bears in the wild, spring is really important. They want to get nice and chunky, very similar to how brown bears do in autumn. They will put on lots of weight and in fact eat well over half of the calories they'll eat in an entire year just in spring alone, literally in a few weeks that they can manage to get whatever. Because during the summertime it could be right up to 25 degrees plus out in the Arctic. So during the summer it does not look like what we expect. It could be incredibly warm and there's certainly no ice unless you are literally right on top of the world. So during that time of year, the polar bears will move down onto the land masses. That's not a bad depiction right just there. So literally the top of the world will have snow and ice, but actually anything below that is generally not going to. So they have nothing really to stand on and therefore they need to move on to those land masses. So places like Canada, Greenland, Russia and Alaska, they all house polar bears year round, but the numbers massively increase over summer. And during that time of year, they obviously stand out like a sore thumb. No seals for them. They are not able to ambush anything when you blend in ultimately. So during the summer they have to be a bit creative. They'll eat things like grasses and sea kelp, berries and other fruits, weak or injured caribou, things like goose eggs or the goose itself if it's silly enough to stick around. They will eat things like leftovers from other predators. They've been seen in bins in local towns, in the local tip as well. So not very fatty, not very cool, not very epic either. And during that time of year it's incredibly hard to be a bear that's basically designed to go long periods of time to store lots of energy, to have a slow metabolism so they can store it. But during the summer when they can't eat all of that fat because they can't catch it, they lose a lot of weight, as you can imagine. So when they come onto the land in the summer, at the beginning of summer, they will be as chunky as they possibly can be, and they'll live off those reserves and just whatever they can get hold of, all the way from the beginning of July normally right through to the end of October or beginning of November time. So it's a long time to be on the land, to be eating, you know, whatever you can get hold of. So they lose about 1 kilo of body fat a day that they live on land, which still blows my mind. I've been doing this talk for 2.5 years, and to lose 1 kilo a day, it's just insane, isn't it? So as you can imagine, the polar bears going back out onto the ice when it returns, they look very, very different, very, very skinny, and they need to get those meals in really nice and quickly to replenish all that they've lost during the summer. Now that's the biggest problem for polar bears in the wild, that the snow and ice. In fact, out in Hudson Bay, it's still not back yet. So we're mid-November now. A few weeks might not seem a big deal, but 1 kilo a day can only go on so long before you start losing your bone density, your muscle mass, all the important things that allow you to actually go hunting again. So out in Hudson Bay, which is shown on there, very similar line of latitude to here. If we're this warm today, I can probably imagine what it's feeling like there. And they are getting the ice coming in. Obviously got to be very thick to hold the half a ton polar bears that we have here, and that's not even a fully grown one. So actually the biggest threat is to do with climate change, the warming of the planet, which means that these guys can't get out where they need to at the time of year that they need to. Ultimately we need to slow that down to make sure that polar bears have a home out in the wild for the future, and these can be really tiny things. It can be switching off lights in rooms that we're not using. Maybe we walk to the shop when we've forgotten our pint of milk rather than jumping in the car to save ourselves a few minutes. Maybe we make sure that we bring our reusable water bottles with us where we can. That's one that I struggle with because I'll wash it and put it back in the cupboard, not next to the door. That's where it should go, straight in the bag again, and I forget that every time. It could be making sure we compost where we can or recycle more responsibly. It could be even cutting out one meal a week that has dairy or meat products in it. That's a really, it seems like a big deal, but 1 meal a week, not even a whole day, can save a massive amount of methane in particular, which is one of the biggest contributors towards global climate alliance warming, because these guys actually require the colder weather to kick in. The ones here are doing absolutely fine without it because they don't need to go hunting. The ones in the wild definitely need it to come back as soon as possible. The last thing I love to talk about for these guys is the wonderful work of Polar Bears International, a wonderful charity. I definitely recommend having a look at their website. It's polarbearsinternational.org. We're part of their Climate Alliance work, so we are accredited with them. we have had them visit us, and we've recently sent Yaz, our head keeper, out to visit them, which is very, very cool. She got to see wild polar bears, she was on the tundra buggy, she got to see the northern lights as well, so it was a very, very good trip. She literally said it was the best week of her life, so I'm hoping that they'll send me one day. We'll see. But their work is literally second to none. Fantastic people, and the only organisation working specifically with polar bears out in Canada. So definitely have a look, polarbearsinternational.org. Does anyone have any questions about these guys? I feel like one just wandered off down there, didn't you?
It's gone
It's
on.
gone through,
Gone
yeah.
in.
So they've got access to both paddocks all the time. They're normally together, but generally,
Mm.
Have you been eating the pumpkins that you've got?
yeah. We normally give them a few. This year we had quite a lot left over, so we're like, here you go. What are you going to do with these? And sometimes I'll be like, no. And I was like, pumpkins? This is amazing. We've not had any of these. And they've had literally probably hundreds now between them. We put them in a big ice block. I think they had that on Tuesday. So they've been clawing that out, and it really slows them down. But yeah, they do love them. And they float as well, so they love anything they can launch in the pool and it floats, or they can carry it around. They have a good time. Catching the last of the road.
Sorry, can I ask, where's the mum?
So she went down to Jimmy's farm. So she was here for a year to the day, and then she went down to Jimmy's farm, which was part of the plan when they arrived. Baby polar bears only stay with their mums for 2.5 years. As soon as they hit 2.5, the cubs, mum's like, off you go. So she did exactly what she should do, and she kicked him out basically, and we knew that would happen, so there was always a plan for her to go there. She has actually passed since moving down there, which is incredibly sad. That was a horrible phone call. But yeah, she underwent a dental surgery.
Is there any plans to get more polar bears?
No, they're not really a group animal, so this is perfect. If they ever fall out, I've got space so we can move them apart if we need to. I hope never to have to. And I can also manage to I can clean them with one on they're always on show. Whereas if we've got more bears than there are spaces, you have to shut one in the house, or it becomes difficult to manage them. And these guys will be perfectly happy as a pair because they've grown up together, and they should be fine. They've got enough room to literally separate themselves if they want to. But yeah, the more you bring in, the more problems you've got with managing them, and they don't particularly like that. They are part of it, but it is a European programme, so there is one coordinator for every species, and that's across the entire zoo and beyond, and they will be the ones that say we need this family line to reproduce. They're too young at the minute, they wouldn't be able to anyway, but the males generally do go off, do the stud thing, come back, so likelihood is that's what they'll say. And because they're twins, they'll probably just say to me which one's gonna go into a box nicely and move and then come back to you very nicely without stress, and I'll just at the time go, this one will probably deal with the situation. So yeah, it could happen because they're so young. In the wild they live 15 to 18. In zoos they can go late 20s, so there's no rush to get them breeding, and particularly as there's so few spaces for them. There's 4 collections in the UK that have them currently. There's a couple more that are looking into it, so fingers crossed there will be more in the future. But even in the rest of Europe there's 100 or so, not many enclosures that can hold them, and that's one of the requirements. They only stay with mum for 2.5 years. There's got to be somewhere for them to go. So it's Florian, he's at Berlin Zoo, that manages the polar bear stud book, and he'll be the one that says, right, we've got room coming up either somewhere in Europe or in the UK, we can start breeding.
What age do they reach maturity to be?
So normally out in the wild they say that they'll hit maturity kind of 5-6, but that they're very unlikely to succeed because the experienced males are just better at finding the females. you can imagine they don't really come together unless they're like specifically looking. So the first couple of years they're just not very good at finding her before the other males have managed to. So normally it's about 8 to 10 before they actually breed in the wild. And females will pick in a little bit younger, so because they're the ones being found, they will normally breed from 5 or 6. But yeah, the males normally are.
Do they reach sort of puberty and have the things like what other species do, where they get hormonal and stressful?
Yeah, I mean, we have over spring this year, or the one gone, they were definitely more, there was more vocalising, and there were definitely differences. So I would imagine I'm just going to get more and more of that as the time goes on. They still were friends the whole time, but it was the first year without mum, so I wonder if that had an impact, if they were like, I don't know, everything's kicking in and they're not sure what they're doing with themselves. It must be horrible, to be fair. They've got no one to tell them what's happening. There you go, welcome. See you later, guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there you go. So we've listened to the keeper's talk about the polar bears. So she did answer the question about the mum Hope dying, because a lady asked about it. So one of them has gone back round here now. So I've managed to get the whole of the keeper talk on this video. So when it's uploaded, you'll be able to watch it properly all the way. Well, yes, they have got a very large enclosure here at Peak. So she says it's one of 4 places in the UK that's got polar bears. So you learnt something there. So they've got a very big enclosure, because this is part of their enclosure. And then the other one is round the back of here, which we're going to go to now, because it's also where the Arctic foxes are. So stay on the stream, and I'm sure you'll be able to see where the other polar bear has gone. The one over there is on top of the rock at the moment, look. So they've got a very large enclosure with a big pond here, and then they've got a pond on the other side as well, which you'll see when I go around the corner. So we'll continue on. Yeah, because they can just walk through into the other enclosure. So the other bear's gone into this side over here. We'll go around there in a minute. The Arctic Circle. That's where they're from anyway. Seals. Living off their fat, so they can live off the fat and go for months without food. I think we'd struggle with a week or a couple of days. Noori, born in Sweden. Yeah. Cozy bear, loves to arrange the bed so it's just right. Loves to play in the pool, wrestle with his brother. And then the Nanook is the other one. Both born on the same day, 29th of November. And there's Nanook. Sweet potato, cherry tomatoes. Bearded seals. Let's go. Let's see if they're over here. Sorry. There's the other bear up there, look. Right up there. So they've got another pond, and there's the remains of the pumpkins, look. See the pumpkins there? Loads of pumpkins to play with. Right at the top of the enclosure now. Right up there, look. So I'll end the stream now so that I can do some footage, but I hope you've enjoyed that. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe at Courseworth25. See you guys in the next video.